They stayed for 5 minutes, 300 seconds. That's the value they placed on my life before deciding my sister's college play was more important. They stood in the harsh, fluorescent glare of the emergency room, looked at my broken body, heard the doctor's grave warnings about a swelling brain, and walked out the door so they wouldn't miss the opening act. They never came back. That's the part that gets me, the part that plays on a loop in the quiet hours of the night. It wasn't just that they left, it was the finality of it, an act of abandonment so clean and complete it felt surgical. It was my mother who made the call, of course. It always was. "Don't be difficult, Alara," she'd said earlier that day, her voice tight with that familiar, long-suffering sigh she reserved just for me. "You know how important tonight is for Chloe. We can't be late because you want to carpool." I was standing in the hallway of their pristine beige-on-beige house, a house that never felt like mine. I was holding my car keys. "It's not about carpooling, Mom. There's a storm warning. It would be safer if we all went together." My father, Richard, didn't even look up from his phone. "Your mother's right. Just drive carefully." Chloe, the star of the evening, drifted out of her room, a vision in silk and expertly applied makeup. She gave me a look that was equal parts pity and annoyance. "It's just a little rain, Alara. Don't be so dramatic. I need this to be perfect. My night, my future, my moment." That's what she was really saying, and I was an inconvenient variable, a potential problem that needed to be managed. So they managed me. They sent me out into the storm alone. I remember the drive. The rain wasn't just rain, it was a biblical deluge, turning the highway into a slick black mirror, reflecting a bruised purple sky. The windshield wipers fought a losing battle, their rhythmic slapping a frantic heartbeat against the roar of the downpour. I felt a profound sense of isolation, like I was the only car on Earth, adrift in a world of water and darkness. Then there were headlights. Impossible, blindingly bright, coming from an angle that made no sense. They weren't in the other lane, they were in my lane, hurtling towards me. There was no time to think, only to react. A scream caught in my throat, my hands locked on the wheel. I remember the screech of my own tires, a useless protest against physics. I remember the sound of metal screaming as it tore itself apart, a noise so violent it felt like the world was ending. I remember the windshield exploding inwards, a glittering, deadly spiderweb, and then silence. A heavy, profound silence that pressed in on me from all sides. And then, nothing at all. Waking up was less a gentle return to consciousness and more like being dragged through gravel. My first sensation was pain, a deep, radiating agony that seemed to emanate from every bone in my body. My second was the rhythmic beeping of a machine somewhere to my left. I cracked an eyelid open. The world was a painful blur of white ceilings and blinding fluorescent lights. A man came into focus. He was wearing blue scrubs and had kind, tired eyes. "Alara, can you hear me? I'm Dr. Carter." I tried to speak, but my throat felt like it was full of sand. A dry croak was all I could manage. "Easy now," he said, his voice calm and steady. "You were in a serious accident. You've been in a coma for a week. You have multiple fractures, your leg, 2 ribs, and a significant concussion. But you're awake now, that's the important thing." A week, an entire week of my life gone. I tried to push myself up, but a fresh wave of pain shot through me, and I fell back against the pillows with a gasp. "Your parents!" I rasped. "My sister!" Dr. Carter's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Hesitation. "They were here," he said carefully. "The night of the accident. They followed the ambulance." Relief, weak but welcome, washed over me. They did come. Then a nurse bustled in, her shoes squeaking on the linoleum. She smiled at me, a practiced, professional smile. As she started checking the IV drip in my arm, a voice popped into my head, as clear as if she'd spoken it aloud. "Poor thing. I can't believe her parents just left her here. Haven't even called since that first night." I blinked, my foggy brain struggling to process the thought. Did she just say that? No, her lips hadn't moved. It must be the drugs, or the concussion. A weird auditory hallucination. I don't understand," I said to Dr. Carter, my voice a little stronger now. "Where are they?" He took a slow breath, the picture of professional composure. Alara, they stayed for a few minutes that night. They said they had to get to your sister's play. They haven't been back since. We've tried calling. The nurse's unspoken words echoed in my skull. Dr. Carter's careful clinical explanation was just a sanitized version of the same ugly truth. They left me. They left me and didn't come back. Dr. Carter looked at me, his face a mask of compassion. And then I heard it again. Another voice that wasn't mine, but his. She's all alone. How could anyone do that to their own child? This is barbaric. My heart hammered against my broken ribs. His mouth was closed. His expression was professional. But I heard him. I heard his thoughts. It wasn't the drugs. It wasn't the concussion. It was real. The accident hadn't just broken my body. It had broken something open in my mind. The first few days with my new gift were a special kind of hell. The hospital, which had seemed like a quiet sanctuary, transformed into a roaring marketplace of thought. Every nurse who took my blood pressure, every orderly who brought my food, every visitor who walked past my door, they all broadcast their inner monologues directly into my brain. I heard the boredom of a security guard on the night shift, the simmering resentment of a doctor who'd been passed over for a promotion, the secret, desperate grief of a woman visiting her dying husband while thinking about the new life she was already planning. It was a relentless, overwhelming flood of human misery, pettiness, and desire. For a while, I thought I was going insane. I would lie in the dark, my hands pressed over my ears as if that could stop the noise inside my own head. But slowly, painstakingly, I learned to control it. It was like learning to tune a radio. I discovered I could focus, could zero in on one person and mute the others. I could build flimsy walls in my mind, turning the deafening roar into a manageable hum. And as I gained control, the fear started to recede, replaced by something else. Curiosity. The power felt less like a curse and more like a key. A key to a secret room in every single person. I was eventually moved from the hospital to an attached rehabilitation facility to learn how to walk again. Dr. Ben Carter, my personal saint in blue scrubs, continued to oversee my case. Our appointments became the anchor of my week. He'd come in to check my progress, and we'd end up talking for an hour. "How are you feeling, really?" he'd ask, his eyes searching mine. "Like I'd been hit by a truck," I'd quip, which, was accurate. I found myself telling him things I'd never told anyone. About the years of feeling invisible in my own family. About how every holiday, every family dinner revolved around Chloe's latest achievement, while mine were met with polite disinterest. I told him about the suffocating pressure of being the sensible daughter, while Chloe was allowed to be the brilliant one. I never mentioned the mind reading, of course. I wasn't that crazy. He was the best listener I'd ever known. He never judged, never offered platitudes. He just sat there, his presence a warm, solid thing in my sterile, white room. And the whole time, his thoughts were a perfect mirror of his words. She's been through so much more than the accident. Her family sounds like a nightmare. She deserves better. He was a fortress of integrity, and I clung to him like a lifeline. Then, 2 weeks after the accident, my family finally graced me with their presence. They swept into my room in a cloud of expensive perfume and false sincerity. "Oh, darling, we were so worried," my mother, Eleanor, chirped, air-kissing the space near my cheek. "Chloe was a mess," my father added, checking his watch. "But her director said the show must go on. You know how it is." I looked at them, my supposed family, and for the first time, I wasn't just seeing them. I was reading them. I tuned my new radio and the broadcast came in loud and clear. I focused on Eleanor first. Her face was a mask of concern. Her mind was a spreadsheet of resentment. "Look at the state of her. This is going to drain us dry." That money was for Chloe's future, her headshots, her move to LA. Why does she have to be so damn dramatic? And beneath that, a flicker of something older, more bitter. A flash of herself on a dusty stage, fumbling a line, her own long-dead acting dreams turning to ash. Then, my father, Richard. He put a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that was supposed to be comforting. It felt like a lead weight. I need to get back to the office. This is a complete waste of a day. God, I hope Susan is free tonight. I need a drink. His mind was a swamp of selfishness and cheap guilt. His affair with Susan, the only thing generating any real emotion. Finally, I turned my attention to my sister, the golden child, Chloe. She was holding a bouquet of funereal-looking lilies and wearing an expression of angelic sorrow. She looks hideous, her thoughts screamed, a stark contrast to her soft-spoken words. I can't believe she's milking this for all it's worth. Now everyone's asking about her instead of congratulating me on my rave reviews. I hope to God she never finds out I was the one who told Mom to make her drive herself. She would have been so clingy and ruined my big night. The air left my lungs. It wasn't just neglect. It wasn't just that they'd forgotten me. It was a deliberate act. Chloe, my own sister, had actively engineered it. She had seen me as a potential threat to her spotlight and had me removed. The last flickering ember of love I might have held for my family was extinguished in that moment, replaced by something cold, hard, and terrifyingly clear. Revenge wasn't just a thought, it was a diagnosis. The drunk driver who hit me, it turned out, was not only drunk but also obscenely wealthy. His insurance company, eager to avoid a messy public trial, threw money at me like it was confetti. The settlement was substantial, enough to change everything, and my parents, of course, assumed I'd come home. They imagined I'd be their broken little project, a prop to display for sympathetic friends. "We've already cleared out the guest room for you, darling," my mother said over the phone, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. Her thoughts, however, were less charitable. "We can control the expenses this way. Make sure she doesn't waste the money on frivolous things." "No, thank you," I said, my voice cool. "I've made other arrangements." The silence on the other end of the line was satisfyingly thick. With Ben's help, he seemed to have a cousin or a friend for every possible need. I found a sleek, modern, and most importantly accessible apartment downtown. He helped me navigate the paperwork, recommended movers, and even assembled a ridiculously complicated bookshelf without once complaining. Our bond wasn't just doctor-patient anymore. It was friendship, solid and real. Once I was settled, the planning began. Phase 1, Operation Implode the Parents. The name from my father's thoughts was my first weapon, Susan. It was laughably easy. I set up an anonymous email account, something generic like truthseeker2024@mail.com. I didn't need to be a hacker. I just needed to be a good listener. I had overheard my father thinking about his favorite steakhouse, the one where he took Susan to celebrate her birthday on the 14th. I did a quick social media search, found the restaurant's page, and scrolled through their tagged photos until I found what I was looking for. A background shot from another diner's post, and in the corner, unmistakably, was my father's car parked in the valet line. I cropped the photo until it was just the car, anonymous but identifiable to anyone who knew it. Then I composed my email. It was short, simple, and devastating. To Eleanor Vance at prestigiouslawfirm.com from a friend. Subject, you deserve to know. Ask Richard who he was really with on the night of the 14th. It wasn't his college roommate, you deserve better. I attached the cropped photo and hit send. My heart was pounding, a mixture of adrenaline and cold fury. A few days later, I made my move. I called my mother, my voice weak and pathetic. "Mom, I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm having trouble with the new prescription bottles. My hands are still so weak. Could you possibly—" She fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. "Of course she needs me now," her mind smugly announced. "She can't manage on her own." I sat on their cream-colored sofa, a Trojan horse in my own family home, and I listened. The house was no longer a pristine sanctuary. It was a war zone. The air hummed with unspoken accusations. I didn't need my power to feel the tension, but with it I could hear every single poisoned thought. Eleanor's mind was a hurricane. That car. I know that's his car. The 14th? He told me he was playing poker with Bill. That liar, that cheating bastard. After everything I've done for him, for his career. Richard's thoughts were a frantic scramble of panic and indignation. How could she know? Who told her? Was it Susan? No, she wouldn't. This is a disaster. I need to get ahead of this. Deny everything. She's being hysterical, as usual. They circled each other, their words polite and clipped, their minds screaming bloody murder. Richard, dear, my mother said, her voice dangerously calm. Did you have a nice time with Bill the other night? Fine, he grunted from behind his newspaper. Don't take the bait, don't take the bait. It's just, she continued, I had the strangest email today. I watched the facade of their perfect upper-class marriage begin to crack, and I felt the first thrilling flicker of success. This was just the foundation. The real demolition was yet to come. And with my parents' marriage merrily detonating in the background, it was time for phase 2. The main event. Chloe. Destroying her career required a more delicate touch than simply sending an email. It required infiltration. I picked up the phone and dialed her number, plastering a weak, forgiving smile on my face that I knew she couldn't see. Chloe, it's me. Elara, oh my God, I've been meaning to call. It's just been absolutely insane, she gushed, the lie so practiced it was almost impressive. Her mind, however, offered a different take. What does she want now? Money? I know, I said, my voice soft. I get it. Your career is taking off. I'm so proud of you. I feel so disconnected from everyone. I'd love to see what your world is like. I want to be there for you, support you. The hook was baited with her favorite subject, herself. She swallowed it whole. Her vanity was a gaping, unsecurable hole in her defenses. Oh, Ilara, of course, she said, her voice shifting, warming to the idea. Actually, this could be good. The tragic, supportive sister. It's a great look for me, very humble. A week later, I was rolling onto the set of her latest project in my new, discreetly modified car. It was a low-budget indie film directed by her boyfriend, Julian. Julian was one of those intense, serious artists who wore a black turtleneck even when it was 70 degrees outside. He genuinely believed his film about a sad barista was going to change the world. To him, Chloe wasn't just his girlfriend. She was his muse. The set was a hive of frantic, ambitious energy. Everyone was either trying to get noticed or terrified of getting fired. And Chloe, my sister, was at the center of it, soaking up the attention like a starved plant. I found a quiet corner, put on my best supportive sister face, and started listening. It didn't take long to find him. Mark, the other actor. He was handsome in a generic, forgettable way, with more confidence than talent. When he looked at Chloe, his thoughts were practically pornographic. And Chloe's thoughts, when she looked back at him, they were a masterclass in contemptuous desire. I made myself a ghost on set. I brought Chloe coffee, I complimented her performance. I became her biggest, quietest fan. And all the while, I was listening. I became an expert on their affair. I knew they were sneaking off to his trailer between takes. I knew they mockingly called Julian the auteur. I heard every sordid detail, every whispered promise, every lie they constructed together. Julian is my stepping stone, I heard Chloe think one afternoon as she watched him set up a shot. Mark gets it. He knows this is a game. Once Julian gets me an agent, I'm gone. I filed it all away. Every treacherous thought, every secret meeting. I wasn't just gathering information. I was collecting ammunition. Telling Julian outright would have been amateur hour. Chloe would have denied it, called me a jealous, bitter cripple. And he, blinded by his artistic connection to her, probably would have believed her. No, this couldn't be a rumor. It had to be a spectacle, a public execution. My opening came in the form of the film's wrap party. It was held at some trendy, overpriced bar that was all exposed brick and Edison bulbs. From listening to Chloe's giddy thoughts for a week, I knew her plan perfectly. She and Mark were going to make a brief appearance at the party, then sneak off to a quiet, old-school hotel bar next door, the Cypress Lounge, for a private celebration. Showtime. I made sure to position myself near Julian as the party hit its peak. He was holding court, looking stressed but proud. I rolled up to him, a glass of sparkling water in my hand. Julian, the film is incredible, I said, my voice full of genuine-sounding admiration. That final scene? Masterful. He beamed, his artist ego preening. Thank you, Alara. It means a lot. Your sister was a revelation. She really has it, his mind added. That raw, untapped potential. We're going to go far together. My stomach turned. We chatted for a few more minutes. I watched Chloe and Mark out of the corner of my eye. They exchanged a look, a tiny nod. It was time. As they began to slip out the door, I made my move. I pressed a hand to my temple, my face scrunching up in pain. Oof, all this noise is giving me a splitting headache. I gave him a weak, apologetic smile. I was thinking of grabbing a quiet drink at the Cypress Lounge next door. I know it's a lot to ask, but would you mind walking me over? It's a bit dark and with this leg. I trailed off, letting the sentence hang there. His brow furrowed with concern. Of course, Alara, no problem at all. Let's get you some air. Checkmate. He offered me his arm and we walked out of the loud, crowded party and into the cool night air. The Cypress Lounge was exactly as I'd pictured it. Dark wood, dim lighting, quiet jazz music playing from hidden speakers. It was the perfect stage. And there, in a secluded leather booth in the back corner, were Chloe and Mark. They weren't just talking. His hand was on her thigh. She was tracing the line of his jaw with her finger, and they were leaning in to kiss. The scene was so intimate, so undeniable, it was like a painting titled Betrayal. We froze at the entrance. Julian's arm tensed under my hand. Oh my God, I whispered, injecting the perfect amount of horror into my voice. I squeezed his arm, feigning shock. Julian, I'm so sorry. His face was blank, but his mind was an explosion. The initial shock was a tidal wave, but it was immediately followed by something much colder, much more terrifying. The gears were turning, the artist's fragile ego shattering and reforming into something sharp and vengeful. She's a user. A parasite. The thoughts came, hard and fast like bullets. They both are. They've been laughing at me this whole time, playing me for a fool. The heartbreak was there, but it was being rapidly consumed by a chilling, calculated rage. I made her. I gave her this film. I gave her credibility. I can unmake her. They will never work in this town again. Chloe finally looked up and saw us. Her face went from blissful to horrified in a split second. Her mind was a single, shrieking siren of pure, unadulterated panic. I just stood there, my hand on Julian's arm, the perfect picture of a shocked, innocent bystander. Inside, I was ice cold. The demolition was complete. The fallout wasn't just swift, it was biblical. Julian, it turned out, wasn't just some indie darling with a penchant for turtlenecks. His father was a legendary producer. He had connections that ran deeper than Chloe could ever have imagined. He didn't just break up with her. He went on a scorched earth campaign. I didn't have to listen to his thoughts to know what was happening. I could hear it in the frantic, panicked thoughts of Chloe's agent when she called. He called everyone. Everyone. Said she was unprofessional, a liability, unreliable. I can't get anyone to even read her for a commercial now. She's radioactive. The calls to Chloe stopped coming. The auditions dried up. The it girl momentum she had been building vanished overnight. Her agent, a shark who only swam towards profit, dropped her via a curt email. Her dream didn't just die, it was murdered, and its corpse was hung up in the town square as a warning to others. I watched from the safety of my sleek, quiet apartment. I'd call her, playing the part of the concerned sister. Chloe, are you okay? I heard about you and Julian, I'd say, my voice dripping with fake sympathy. He's a monster! He's trying to ruin me! She'd shriek, her voice raw with rage. Her thoughts were a toxic stew of fury and victimhood. It was never her fault. It was Julian's. It was Mark's. It was the universe's. It was probably somehow my fault too. She never once considered that her own actions had led her here. The self-awareness just wasn't there. Meanwhile, the other bomb I'd planted had finally detonated. Armed with a fresh batch of anonymous tips from yours truly, bank statements I'd glimpsed in my father's office, whispers of secret credit cards I'd plucked from his mind, my mother officially filed for divorce. It was glorious, and it was ugly. Their split wasn't one of those quiet, amicable things. It was a vicious public spectacle. They fought over everything: the house, the cars, the art collection. They dragged each other through the mud and legal filings, airing decades of dirty laundry for the world to see. His affairs, plural as it turned out, were laid bare. Her secret shopping addiction and mountains of debt were exposed. The perfect Vance family, the one I had been a reluctant accessory to my whole life, was publicly and spectacularly dismantled. I sat in my apartment reading the gossip columns and legal reports, and I felt, what? Triumph? Justice? No. Nothing at all. The war was over. I had won. My father was a social pariah, shacked up with Susan in some sad little condo. My mother was rattling around in the beige house, a ghost of her former self, drowning her sorrows in Chardonnay and legal bills. And Chloe was back in her childhood bedroom, her acting dreams in ashes around her. My family was a smoking crater, a testament to my focused, calculated rage. And I felt completely, utterly empty. The victory was hollow. There was no sweet satisfaction, no feeling of peace or closure. I had spent months living inside the toxic, selfish minds of my family, and now their poison felt like it had seeped into my own bones. The constant symphony of thoughts I had once learned to control had become my entire world. The silence I craved was nowhere to be found, least of all inside my own head. My revenge had been a loud, all-consuming project, and now that it was finished, the quiet that followed was deafening. Ben found me one evening sitting on my sofa, staring at a blank wall. The TV was off. No music was playing. I was just sitting there, lost in the unnerving stillness. He had seen the headlines, of course. The messy Vance divorce was local news fodder. He let himself in with the key I'd given him, his expression one of deep concern. "Elara," he said softly, sitting on the coffee table in front of me. "Talk to me. What's happening to you?" I looked at him, at his kind, honest face, and something inside me broke. The dam I had so carefully constructed burst and everything came pouring out. "I did it, Ben," I whispered, the words tasting like ash. "All of it. The divorce, Chloe's career, it was all me." And then I told him. I told him everything. About the accident, and waking up with the noise in my head. About hearing the nurse's pity and my family's cruelty. About using their darkest thoughts against them. I laid my soul bare, confessing every manipulation, every lie, every cold-hearted move. I braced myself for the fallout, for the look of disgust and horror that was sure to cross his face. I had become a monster, and now the one good person in my life was about to see it. He just listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't recoil. He sat there, his gaze steady, until I had finished, my confession ending in a choked sob. I waited for the judgment. Instead, he reached out and took my hand. His thoughts were so clear, so calm, they cut through my own internal chaos like a beacon. The trauma was the disease, his mind said, a doctor's diagnosis for a sickness of the soul. The power was the symptom. The revenge was a fever that had to break. He looked me straight in the eye. "You weaponized your pain to survive," he said aloud, his voice gentle but firm. "I don't condone it, Elara, but I understand it. They pushed you to a place where you felt you had no other choice. The question is," he squeezed my hand, "who are you now that the war is over?" A year later, the world was a quieter place. Mostly because I had learned to make it so. The power was still there, a low hum in the background of my life, but I had built walls. Strong ones. It was no longer a constant, invasive broadcast. It was a receiver I could choose to turn on, but most days I left it off. Ben and I stood in a small, sun-drenched garden, surrounded by a handful of close friends. He was wearing a dark blue suit, and I was in a simple white dress. We were getting married. My leg was strong, the limp barely noticeable. The scars, both visible and invisible, were fading. After the ceremony, as we were mingling with our guests, a letter was handed to me. The return address was my mother's. My breath caught in my throat. I could feel the pull, the old familiar temptation to just listen, to open the envelope and read her mind from the ink on the page, to know if the words inside were sincere or just another manipulation. I held the letter in my hand for a long moment. Was she sorry? Did she regret it? Did she finally understand? And then I realized it didn't matter. My closure, my peace, didn't depend on her. It couldn't. It had to be mine and mine alone. I folded the letter, unopened, and slipped it into Ben's suit pocket. For later, I said, or never. He smiled, understanding completely. I looked across the garden at him, my husband, as he laughed with a friend. For the first time in a long time, I used my power not as a weapon, not as a shield, but as a gift. I focused on him and I let myself listen. There was no static, no hidden agenda, no dark undercurrent. There was just a simple, beautiful, profound thought, shining with love and contentment. She's finally happy. My wife. A real smile. My own genuine smile spread across my face. I started walking towards him, towards the quiet, profound clarity of a love I had truly earned, leaving the echoes of the past behind me.